Good afternoon again, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar, The Selling Manager, also known as the toughest job in the staffing industry. It's my pleasure to introduce to everyone today our guest speaker, Mr. Don Hahn, the president of Hahn Training. Don's here today because he is a very accomplished sales executive, and he has been responsible in his career for delivering marketing, training, recruiting, and coaching solutions to sales teams ranging from one person all the way up to organizations with up to 800 sales professionals. He's had a very distinguished 25-year career in sales, being a top performer for multiple Fortune 500 companies. He's also a certified Franklin Covey coach, a member of the American Society for Training and Development, and the International Coaching Federation. And that's all the formal stuff. On a more personal note, I've had the pleasure of knowing Don for several years through a local association we both belong to for successful entrepreneurs. And Don impresses me not just with his knowledge and his insight, but his very down-to-earth manner in which he can provide great information and kind of kick you in the butt to make you do what you need to do. And today Don's going to help all of us with some great advice for dealing with one of the biggest challenges we all must balance, the constant struggle between selling and managing. So Don, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much, David, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time. And before we get started, we're going to spend probably about 50 minutes, and then we'll turn it over to some questions you may have. We're going to talk about the selling manager. And as we go through this, the reality is we get done with this hour, and you're going to forget 90% of the stuff that we talk about today. And that's not a bad thing. What I would like you to do to get the most out of this is, as we go through this, if there's one or two or three ideas that you can conceptualize, want to put together an action plan to fix them, I would suggest you go away with maybe three things that you're going to take away from today and do. Don't try to absorb everything, and if you do that, I think you're going to be successful. So, when we talk about the selling manager, I define it in your world as a branch manager that's responsible for overseeing both the duties of their staff plus someone who's personally accountable for their own territory or their own book of business. And, there's actually two different types in the staffing business. There's, a salesperson who is a selling manager but has few direct reports. You'll find that in the smaller branches. And then there's the individual that has many direct reports, that is the medium to larger branches. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about, how a manager has come to be as a selling manager, what those challenges are, and then I want to leave with 5 simple and effective best practices. And in the end, the real question is, and the biggest challenge you're probably faced with, is where the heck do you spend your time? So given all the things you have to do, the question becomes, what is the most effective use of your time? And, selling managers have arisen to deal with critical mass issues. Most of the branches in which you work, a staffing branch is by nature a small, regionalized enterprise, and you have a multitude of tasks, whether it's selling, recruiting, servicing, and the selling and recruiting are the primary tasks. The financial model that you have requires a pretty lean approach, requires multiple functions by people within a branch. So a selling manager has arisen as a person that oversees the branch but then also does their own stuff. And that's a big challenge. Done every job that you can possibly do in sales in my career, and I will tell you that the toughest job there is that frontline selling manager. Why? Because they're torn in many different directions. So we're going to look at that process, and I want to come to quickly, 5 best practices you might be able to use. So if we could move on here, David. The next slide talks about the evolution of a sales career. And if you're like me, and the majority of managers, you were promoted into your position on the basis of exceptional sales performance. Somewhere someone said, well, this person's very good at selling. They must be pretty good at managing. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. They are two very, very different skill sets that are required. Now, on top of that, once you get promoted into that position, most companies lack the time to really coach and develop that new manager, so you're thrown into the field. And sometimes that promotion comes with the caveat that you have to bring your own book of business and manage that. So sales management's tough enough, but when you're carrying a quota on top of it, it presents some unique challenges. So let's go on to the next piece. And this is a poll. The question is, and we'd like you to respond on the poll, how much formal management/leadership training have you had? So here's the poll. Please select one. Have you had a lot of this type of training, some of the training, or none? Please take a couple of minutes and respond.
We'll leave this poll open for probably another 10 seconds. We're at about 80% completed, so if you would, just submit your votes. We'll tally the totals in another 3 seconds, 2, 1. All right, we're going to close it down and share the results.
Okay.
And let me put up the results.
My suspicion is, as is typical, this could have been expected before the answers, some training has been provided. Some companies invest a lot in that training. However, some to none makes up the preponderance. And this is not a really good thing, given the fact that frontline sales management is probably the most critical aspect of any company's job. So let's move on from this. I think it's pretty telling, though. And let's get into the common challenges you have. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to this, but this is a typical day in the life of a sales manager, okay? You get up, you wake up in the morning, first thing when you go in, you get in the office, you're usually the first one in, if I know managers, and you make the coffee, because, we got to have that to wake us up. So we get our coffee, then we check our voicemail, and then we check our email. And then we start responding to our emails and our voicemails. The problem that we have with this is that as salespeople, this can work fairly effectively. But as a selling manager, we got to understand it's a huge leap from sales to management. And the sales practices that you were adhering to rarely work when you manage others. Understand that salespeople are tactical, and it's ingrained to us to be avid multitaskers. Sometimes we really don't have a strategic plan. So what we have to do as managers, we have to take a step back. We have to really connect the vision to the tactics, and the only way you can do that is to become a good strategist. But we're new to it, and we just run. Then we tend to do it ourselves, because the time it takes to delegate and develop people, it's tough. And so we elect to do it ourselves because nobody can do it better. And then we enter into the super salesman, or the super salesperson, syndrome. And we don't provide the leadership and accountability that the team needs. We tend to micromanage and focus on tasks and tactical stuff. Understand leadership is more about vision than tactics. And the other thing that's really key is that we don't recognize that motivation is a very personal thing. People may not be as motivated as us. They may not take the same initiative. And if they are motivated, it's motivated by something else. And so don't assume that what motivates you will motivate others. So I'd like you to turn to the next question, which is a poll. And I'd like you to identify, of these, which is your largest issue. So we'll give you an opportunity, David. Probably take a couple of minutes to select your greatest issue of transitioning from selling to managing, your time management, being stuck with tactics instead of dealing with strategy, becoming the super salesperson, which is very common, and then are you good at creating accountability and holding people to what they said they would do?
Don, too bad we didn't have room for all of the above. I think that would fit me.
Well, it fits most of us to some degree, David. In fact, we actually shortened down this list. There really are probably, there's a multitude of them, but this is the top ones, I'd say, the top 5 issues in some fashion.
Okay, we have 80% in, so I'm going to close the poll down now, and we'll share the results. Bear with me 1 second. And putting up the results.
Okay. Time management and accountability are the 2 greatest ones, followed by strategy versus tactics. And again, this is not uncommon. Time management is really the most often requested seminar that I get asked for. And as a result, it's really important that, considering the challenges that you have with time management, take a look at the number of people that work for you and multiply that problem by the number of people that work for you. And if you're having challenges with time management, and if you're having problems with connecting the strategy and the tactics, think about the problems and the issues that your people are being confronted with. Okay. All right. Let's talk about why it is that salespeople fail. And in fact, I'm going to go beyond salespeople. I'm going to say that basically every individual has this problem. That being insufficient training. We don't spend enough time training them. Another issue could be that we really haven't established what the standards of performance is. People do not know what is expected of them. Additionally, they don't know what is the importance of their job. What must they do day in and day out, and how does what they do connect to the corporate vision? If they don't know this stuff, they're going to lack motivation. And if they lack motivation, then it's going to be really hard to move the team. The other thing that happens is that they tend to be given goals. And if the rep or the individual doesn't share in their planning and their success, then they're not going to be motivated. They're going to look at it as a chore. They're not going to take responsibility. But I think the biggest issue, and being in your business, you know better than I, is that poor hiring is the worst. So if you don't do a good job hiring, everything else is lost. I also like to talk about coaching a little bit, because coaching will provide a great deal of direction. It will give people the opportunity to grow beyond their comfort zone. And I'm a certified coach, and my belief is that there's not enough coaching in corporate America. Coaching is probably the most valuable tool that you can utilize to grow people. And so my suggestion is spend time developing a coaching plan for your people. Pure and simple, because this is why they're failing. David, you want to move on? So given that's why people fail, what can we do about it? And I suggest 5 things. And a very high level, step back and recalibrate. Understand that your responsibility has changed when you moved into selling manager, and your perspective must also change. You have to take a broader purview. Secondly, do you have a strategic plan? You have to have a strategic plan, operate from a strategic plan, but most importantly, become more strategic in your approach and get your people to become more strategic. Is the team rallying about a common cause? Have you created a sense of purpose and teamwork? Do your people know what the common vision is, and are they all working lockstep to do it? And we're going to talk about these all in greater depth. And I think the next piece that is critical is accountability, and I don't think that any companies really provide enough accountability. So have you defined what are the standards of performance for every responsible job that reports into you? And do you hold them to those standards of performance? In other words, are you inspecting what you expect? And what you inspect will get done, period. And I think while we don't want to quit supervising, because supervising takes care of the daily tactical, you have got to find time to spend more time coaching and developing your people. And we'll talk more about what coaching is and what it isn't, but I am a believer you got to do more of that. So as we step back and recalibrate, question I have is, do you have 5 key objectives that you have for your organization? On a monthly basis, do you have 5 major goals, 5 big, hairy, audacious goals, and that's a term that's used in marketing, but 5 big, hairy, audacious goals that keep you focused on the vision? Have you identified what the strengths are and the weaknesses and the opportunities and threats based upon your team makeup? And your planning of your people, okay? Are you actually doing a good job of assessing the strengths of your team? And I recommend you assess the team, you identify what training they need, and you train them. That's the easy thing. That's going to be a quick baseline return. The broader thing that you have to do is coach people, because that's about modifying behavior. It's not an intellectual proposition, but you need the intellectual baseline, but then you've got to coach people to do the stuff that's really important. And then empower them. We've got to empower our people versus enabling them, okay? And we all have cultures we've built, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. You've got to create an empowering environment. You cannot motivate people. You can only set the stage for a motivating environment that allows them to achieve their goals. Okay? So let's move on and talk a little bit more about this people plan that I spoke of.
Sure. Don, before we go ahead, we had 2 issues come up. I want to let everybody know there seems to be some background noise with a clicking. Don, I'm not sure if it's coming from your phone or it's just the GoToWebinar service. I have an unfortunate feeling it may be the service. But we had a question come in about, and this may be something you're getting into in the presentation later, about defining what it means to be more strategic and what do you look for in a strategic plan. And if you're going to cover this later, then just let everybody know we're going to cover it later.
Yeah, I think we will cover it later. But, you know, I can talk to that right now. Let's do that. The strategic plan, you know, there's a whole bunch of different strategic plans. You can actually go on the web, look up strategic planning, and you can get about 20 different websites that will give you some type of plan. But the key things you want to identify is, you know, what is the goal of the organization, and what are the roles that you need to achieve your goals? Once you've achieved those, identified what those roles are, then what are the specific goals and contributions of each of those roles? And then you've got to reverse engineer what your major strategic objectives are. So it could be that you want to grow the market share by 20%. You want to improve gross margin by 12%. Whatever those are, you've got to figure out the tactical pieces that allow them, your people, to do it, and then assign the responsibilities. So the strategic plan is basically where you start with the vision of what the organization is about, and companies have their own culture. So how do you reverse engineer what the vision of the company is and its mission statement into the strategies that will be required to execute on that? Now, I give an example of a sales rep. A sales rep wakes up in the morning and they're running. Okay? If you're a sales rep, you wake up in the morning and you're chasing a quota. It's not about the quota. It's about what you have to do to meet that quota, because the quota could be a monthly or a quarterly or an annual number. And if we don't strategically plan how it is that we're going to achieve that goal, and then translate that into specific tactics, we aren't going to be successful. So with lacking that strategy that says this is how we're going to do it, we just get up and we do stuff. And we end up doing frenetic, hysterical activity. So the strategy is the glue between the vision of the company and the tactics that have to be executed on a regular basis. So it's kind of reverse engineering the vision and the goals. So as we talk about the people plan, you have to understand that we look at people's cash balance. And people's comfort zone is based upon the compilation of 4 things, and that is the knowledge that they have. That's the body of truths that they've accumulated over their life, their experiences, their expertise. The second piece is the skills. This is the proficiency that they've acquired over the course of their lifetime. Now, unfortunately, most people hire to skills, and they don't really get to the habits. That's why the behavioral interviewing is so important. But the real key is the attitude, the disposition they have. This gets to how they feel about making a phone call, a cold call. How do they feel about rejection? How do they feel about an irate customer? How do they feel when a customer says, no, let me think it over? And then the last piece, which is the most important, is the habits that they display. And this is an acquired behavioral pattern, and it ends up being instinctive after a while. Now, we all have habits, but those habits may be good, they may be bad. So if you hire somebody, don't assume because they've been doing something a long time that they have good habits. So this is a critical piece, and I know it's the business you're in, that of selecting and recruiting talent, but it's kind of the shoemaker's daughter syndrome, is that sometimes we don't turn our attention to the important stuff that we make others turn their attention to. Okay? All right, let's move on, and I get into the hiring and firing concepts, which is a critical part of this first step. And I really rely on a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And a lot of the things you see here are really based on principles of Jim Collins, which Good to Great is a wonderful book. And his premise is you get the right people on the bus in the right seat. If there's not a seat, then you have to get off. And you have to ask the person to get off. The next piece is Collins talks about a culture, a disciplined culture. Disciplined culture has people who are disciplined. That means that, the people have a certain habit, or they have qualities which are that they're very focused and they take initiative. Secondly, disciplined action. So they know what activities they have to do, and the focus is there. And I'm going to share with you a definition of focus that I once heard. And this is the definition. Focus is the ability to say no to good opportunities because there's better opportunities. So focus is the ability to say no to one opportunity because you can spend your time in a better area. So the guidelines on employee selection: when in doubt, don't hire. When you know you need to make a people change, and believe me, we know it, but we just hope it'll change, and leopards don't change their spots. We know that. When you know you have to make a change, do it. And the other thing is put your best people on the best opportunities. Don't give them your biggest problems. Okay? Give them blue sky. Let them really develop. If we can go on here. Okay. 2 truths regarding hiring. There isn't a moment in your career, especially as a selling manager, if you're running a branch, human capital is the most important thing. So there's not going to be a time when you have more to lose or to gain than when you're hiring somebody. And hiring a staffing sales professional, or any sales professional for that matter, I suggest to you is one of the hardest hires you will ever make, because salespeople are professional interviewers. And if you don't follow the proper steps, you're going to get in trouble. So here, no, go ahead, David. This is the hiring horrors that I've seen. Some of them I've committed. Some of them you may have committed. And there's a couple here that are key. Hiring from a position of desperation. Most of us do that. We wait too long, and then it's a fire drill. So everybody looks a little better than they were. And I'm sure your clients are doing this as well. We haven't really defined what the selection criteria is. If you haven't benchmarked it and you don't know what you're expecting that person to do, you may make the wrong hire, and then you're stuck. So not to focus too much on this, let's turn our attention to the strategic plan a little bit, because that seems to be important. So if we can turn the page. there's two pieces of a strategic plan. First of all, there's the plan itself. Secondly, is execution of the plan. And I suggest to you that building the plan is fairly easy, and I can give you some good tools to do that. There is a very good planning document that's done by Gazelles, gazelles.com, G-A-Z-E-L-L-E-S. The gentleman that runs it is Vern Harnish, and Vern Harnish wrote a book called Mastering the Rockefeller Principles. And it's a wonderful book, and it shows you how to distill your strategic plan into one page. And it's a remarkable tool. But building this plan is the easy part. Executing on it is absolutely the most difficult. But I want you to look at the real purpose in building a strategic plan is to figure a way that you can achieve your objectives. But if you have your people participate in that, what you have to do is make absolute certain that your people are becoming very, very good at a strategic process. The real benefit of helping your salespeople and all of your people contribute to the strategic plan is not the plan itself, it's the perspective derived from it. So the keys to the plan are build it, create alignment, then communicate it and manage to it. Most people take the plan and they put it on their credenza, and then 3 years later when they move their desk or their office, they throw it out. That's typically what happens. So how do you make the plan real for your people? And that's by distilling it into daily objectives that support that plan. So manage to the tactics that will support the strategic plan. Okay, let's move on if we could. Okay, the question I have, some of you don't have sales people working for you, but the question becomes, even if you are a selling manager, do all the salespeople within your organization, including yourself, have a written plan? And I'm not saying a quota. I'm not saying sell more. I'm not saying grow the business by 10% or improve gross margin by 10%. That's a goal. The strategy is how you're going to do it, what activities. So please select, do your salespeople in your firm have a written plan? Take a minute. It's either a yes or a no answer. If it's kind of, sort of, then it's a no. I hope we're doing okay with the clicking. I know it's been a problem. I apologize.
Yeah, it's on and off, Don, and unfortunately right now it just came back on. So I'm not sure what the cause is. Unfortunately, it's looking more and more like GoToWebinar. We're, again, just crossing the 80% voted, so I'll close the poll and put up the results. And you may be disheartened, but probably not surprised.
Okay. Well, these are typical numbers. It's always somewhere in the 80-20, 70-30 range. And actually, I'll applaud you, is that the folks that are on this call, these are really higher yeses than I usually see. I see about 20% really have a plan. And, you know, the plan should define what they do to develop their territory, what they do to develop their accounts, what are they doing to fill that funnel. And if you take a look at it, it's kind of like making rain. The funnel, which is your sales funnel, is the stuff that you're working on. There's a cloud that's above that funnel that's your territory. By definition, it's the entire universe of your accounts. So you got to look at it as seeding that cloud, and that's networking. That's going to the right watering holes, doing the right speaking engagements, attending the right functions that will create a brand within your community that will enable it to rain into your funnel. So look at it as seeding the cloud that will cause the funnel to grow. And you have to look at, for every prospect that comes out the bottom, you have to fill it with 3 others. So it's usually a 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, let's move on if we can. And I think that building a sense of purpose and team, this is about leadership. It's not management. But my experience is that there's no one in your organization that shows up in the morning and says, I want to fail. The question is, do they clearly understand the end game? Do they know that what they do does count? Are you rewarding them? Are you recognizing them? Are you motivating them? And I think the key reason that companies do not have a good sense of purpose and team can be really quickly linked to communications, or the lack of communications, and also a feedback mechanism. If you're doing annual reviews on your people and they're failing all year long, and then you tell them at the end of the year they failed, that doesn't help anybody. So the frequency of that feedback has to be very, very quick. It's got to be decisive, and it's got to match the behavior. So if we can move on, I'd like to talk about critical piece, and I spend a lot of my time talking about accountability. Accountability is one of the toughest things, okay? And I look at it as the intersection of three things. First of all, do you have standards that you've set? For every position, what is the standard of performance? What's the bar? Are they above the bar? Are they below the bar? What happens if they're consistently below the bar? What happens if they exceed the bar? Those are consequences. And, you know, you'd be shocked at the number of companies that don't have standards. Their quota is just sell more than last year. And the consequences, if somebody consistently fails to meet their objectives, they keep getting do-overs. They get a mulligan. You can't keep giving mulligans, okay? You have to make sure that there's a carrot as well as a stick. And I'm a carrot guy. I'm not a stick guy. But in the end, continued failure has to result in a stick. And the toughest one, the third one, is this ownership piece. Okay, and I want you to think about goals that you've been given. Somebody dictated your goal and said, here's your number, go hit it. And you had no part in it. You make a decision instantly. Either you're going to make that or you aren't. And that's when the decision's made. I then want you to think also about a goal that you've created and how motivated you are to do that. So your job as a leader is to help create a sense of ownership to these standards and consequences. That's the piece that we really seldom do well. But that small intersection right there, that very small spot, is accountability. If you lack a standard or you lack a consequence or they don't own it, you do not have accountability. And there's one last thing I'll say on accountability, is that one thing is required for somebody to have accountability, and that's humility. They have to have the desire, and they have to understand that they alone are responsible. You can't accept people saying, I could have sold more if I would have been in Chicago, or I could have sold more if I was in LA. Well, the fact is they live in the city that they've chosen to live in, and there aren't any excuses. And we really do accept people's excuses too readily. Next, if you would, David. Now, every company has a culture. I found every company has a culture. It's either a rigorous culture, could be a ruthless culture, could be an empowering culture, or it could be an enabling culture. So you all have a culture, and I'm not going to ask you to answer this, but I want you to reflect on this. And on a scale of 1 to 10, are there clearly conveyed standards across your organization? Secondly, are you consistent with consequences? And then thirdly, who owns the objectives? And really answer yourself honestly on this. And if you have a score of 30, that means you're doing a heck of a job. A score of 3 is really very, very poor. And only you can make some conclusions based on that. But I will say that the great majority of companies don't hold people accountable to consequences. So they end up with a bunch of people that are attracted to the company because there are no consequences. And the top performers leave because they're saying this isn't fair. And I'm really telling you stuff that you tell your own clients. So Okay, let's move on, if we could, to the fourth piece in accountability. Basically, make sure they know the process, and then hold them accountable. Agree on what the priorities are. Delegate them and get them to do the right thing. Okay, not doing things right, but doing the right thing, which is prioritization, making sure that everything they do is high gain. And then put in some measurable metrics that allow you to define the process and improve it. Now we go to people's cash, their knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. And habits are a combination. I want to talk a little bit about this. This is accountability, and this answers some of the question on strategy. Goals is where you're going. Strategy is how you're going to get there. Tactics is what it is you're going to do to execute on the strategy. Now, if you take away the strategy, every sales rep or every person wakes up in the morning and they get busy. They get busy doing tactics that are somewhat, hopefully, linked to the goals. But absent a good strategy, that activity becomes frenetic, becomes hysterical. It becomes non-effective. So people go home and they work hard, but the question is, did they move the ball forward? And strategy is that connection between the goals and the midterm things that have to be done, and then you reverse engineer that to the tactics. A tactic is a phone call. It's an appointment. It's a proposal. It's a whatever. It's a specific metric. It could be a networking event. The strategy is how many in the mix that will help you build out your territory and achieve your goals. So that's accountability. Let's move on, if we could, David. We'll go to the next piece. And I'd like you to think about this. I've got on the left a term, and on the right a definition. And people confuse these. They confuse what's coaching, what's mentoring, what's supervising. And I find many people are mentoring when they think they're coaching. They're supervising when they think they're mentoring. And unless you know what you're doing when you're doing it, you're going to really spend more of your time in the mentoring and supervising. I can't stress enough, become a better coach. So if you would flip the slide, David, we'll connect these for you. You see, supervision is oversight of those tactics. It's the stuff that you do, and as a salesperson, being a new selling manager, you do a lot of that. Mentoring is when you take your experience or someone in the company and you fast-track somebody. You give them a go-to person to expedite stuff. Coaching is an empowering learning style. The employee defines the solution. A good coach asks questions, does not give any answers. So it's kind of like Socrates, and just asking the question to get that person that is your employee to think about their problem in a different way. We could flip the page. Coaching your people. The fact here is that people perform in a manner that's consistent in their self-image. And it's up to you as a coach to align the vision, the goals, the attitude, and the tactics. And coaching is about asking the right questions. If you're going to coach, I find that people say, I don't have time to coach. I just don't have time. Well, the fact is you don't have time not to coach. You don't have time coaching because you're putting out fires. The reason for putting out fires is maybe because you hired the wrong person, or maybe you don't spend enough time coaching them, so they're making mistakes. So the point is that coaching is an empowering process that gets people to grow and make decisions. And the best coaching you can do is when someone comes to your door, lines up with everybody else while you're getting your jacket off, and you're coming into the office and you've got 10 people lined up, 3 people, and they're asking for the answer. If you give them the answer, you're enabling them. If you give them the opportunity to think through the problem, you're empowering them. So I want you to answer this question yourself. Are you an enabler or an empowerer. And coaching is the empowerment. Okay, we're running a little bit on time, so let's get to ongoing coaching and support. And this is probably a good way to depict it. What is a performance improvement plan? And it's not the thing we do before we fire somebody. Everybody that works for you should have a performance improvement plan, which is a dedicated plan designed to help them overcome their challenges. Help them understand their annual goals and objectives, the standards, and then coach them to higher levels of performance. And then after that, you may find some training that needs to be done. That's an easy intellectual transfer of knowledge. Then you go back to the performance improvement plan and start again. So that's how I see development of personnel. I'm going to flip the page here. Here's a good sample coaching call. It's a PAL. We call it a purpose, agenda, and length. Shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. You as the coach do not bring the agenda. The agenda is not yours. The agenda is theirs. A good thing for them to do is come in with an agenda that says, here's what I accomplished since our last call. This is what we agreed I'd do. Here's how I did. Here's the current things I'm faced with today and the areas of improvement I'd like to talk about. After that dialogue, in which you're talking 30% of the time and they're talking 70%, what ends up happening is they come back and they said that they will do certain things by a certain date. You come back to that very place. That arrow goes right back to what they accomplished. That closes the loop. So coaching is about accountability and closing the loop, and I encourage you to do that. So here's some good rules. Eliminate the discussion of tasks. Stop doing the flybys, which is, how you doing on this project? Yeah, I'm doing great, okay. Get to the specific behavioral issues they're having. Understand that it's their agenda and their action items, not yours. Resist giving answers. Let them get the answers. They struggle for the answer. They're going to struggle a lot less going forward. The 70-30 rule, they should talk 70% of the time. You talk 30% of the time with questions. And document what they state they're going to do and close the loop by coming back to it in the next time. And I suggest if you have less than 5 people, you should be coaching them weekly. More than 5, it's something longer than that. Okay, poll here, and this will be the last poll, I believe. How are you coaching your employees? So I'd like you to answer this question, take a couple minutes. Do you do it weekly one-on-ones, monthly one-on-ones? You're constantly coaching, and I hear that a lot. I can't find the time to coach, or I don't have anyone to coach. So take a minute and vote here. Is the clicking still bad, David?
Hit and miss. It's off and on. Right now it's pretty good, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that it stays that way.
All right, great. And we're going to just, after this, we have a couple slides to conclude, and I'll turn it over to any questions, David.
Okay, we're getting there. We're at just under 80%. We'll give everybody another few seconds to respond.
Super.
And we've got a lot of busy coaches, as you'll see in a minute. I'm going to close the poll, and we will put up the results.
Okay. All right. This is, it's all over the map. Weekly one-on-ones, and my preference is that you do it weekly. Oftentimes, if people do it monthly, the bottom line is coach as often as you can, folks. Please do. Every minute you spend coaching, you're going to get 10 productivity minutes in return. Guarantee it. It's the highest order of learning you can possibly provide because it's professional and personal growth by the individual. Now, I hear a lot of people say they're constantly coaching, and there's a lot of, this is interesting, there's a lot of this just-in-time coaching, but don't confuse. Hopefully this high number isn't that we think we're coaching when we're really directing. Coaching is a very special activity, and you could be mentoring when you think you're coaching. You could be supervising when you think you're coaching. The bottom line in coaching is who came up with the solution. That's really what you want to determine. In coaching, the coachee elicits the thought process, the strategy, and the options, and comes up with a conclusion. In mentoring, the person that's doing the mentoring provides the solution after discussion. In supervision, it's pretty much just management. It's direction. 8% of the people can't find time to coach. That's a real issue, okay? You have a lot on your plate, and I suggest you've got to find that time, even though it's tough. And some people just don't have anyone to coach. Then you know what I would do with that extra time? I'd use it for yourself to spend that time planning effectively, become more strategic. Let's turn on to the next page if we could, David. Okay, so let's just review. We talked about stepping back and recalibrating. There's a tendency for us to run and keep running, and you're on this treadmill. My point is, step back, take a broader purview, please. Secondly, develop a strategic plan and become more strategic, and make sure your people are more strategic, not to the point where it's paralysis, analysis paralysis, but there has to be some thought, some very strong thought before you act. Salespeople traditionally act, then think. Okay, it's just the way they're built. They're high Ds. Okay, second, thirdly, create a sense of purpose and team leadership. Less management, more leadership. Your people are bright. They'll find the solution. Oftentimes, they're better solutions. Give them an opportunity to contribute. Listen to them. Establish what the metrics are. What are the standards? What are the consequences, good and bad? And catch your people doing the right thing, please. And then, thirdly, who owns it? Make sure they own it. It's not, you keep asking for something, they keep slipping, and then they don't feel as though they owe it. And find the time to coach your people. So, a few summary slides. You want to make the team individually effective, efficient, and self-sufficient. And you do this by coaching people to higher performance, hiring the right people, benchmarking your group, managing them, letting them know the standards, doing strategic planning, not just building it, but executing on it. And the tough part is for a lot of selling managers is know when the heck to get out of the way. Okay, we like to do. All right, let's move on. Next slide. Okay. Here's some advice. If you have a large team, what I suggest you do is, first and foremost, raise your expectations. My experience is that we don't hold people to high enough standards. We don't have high enough expectations of them. Okay? We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but maybe not on others. So hold them accountable to higher standards and make sure they understand the consequences and catch them doing it right. Live the vision. Okay? Everybody has a vision or a mission statement, and bottom line is that becomes white noise. It's posted on the wall and you don't live it. Coach the person, not the team. You can move the team forward, but not if each individual cornerstone to that team isn't engaged and coached. And then finally, don't accept excuses. Just don't. I mean, you don't accept them of yourself. Don't accept them of from other people. Now, this is if you have a large team. What if you don't have a lot of people you're managing to? That's the next slide. Here, if you have a small or no team, take this focus and focus on yourself in terms of alignment. Are your tactics aligned with the goals? And that's the strategy. So you have to plan and manage your time. Make sure that everything you're doing is high gain. You should be spending at least 15 minutes a day in the morning planning. You should be spending a half an hour each Sunday night or Monday morning before the week, after the week, doing a plan. And you've got to reverse engineer this so the quota is a year-long process. What's your quarterly goals, the monthly goals that come from that, the weekly goals that come from that, and the daily tactics that have to be driven. So hold yourself accountable to higher standards. And I'm going to say eat that frog. And that means there's a wonderful book by Brian Tracy, and he says procrastination is a huge, huge deficit to all of us. So the thing you want to do is, frogs are big and ugly, okay? He says choose the biggest, ugliest frog you can find and eat it first. Everything else is easier after that. And it's kind of a strange scenario, but the point is, don't procrastinate. Do the tough stuff first. Then you're going downhill. You should have a coach. Get a coach, because my experience is that most selling managers are on an island. They don't necessarily get the support they need. And don't accept excuses from yourself. Hold yourself accountable. And I think the next slide sort of summarizes it, right? I think that's it. David is.
Yeah, Don, we've had a couple of questions come in, so we're going to turn it over for Q&A. Once again, for everyone who's listening, you can now hear the clicking has returned in force, but we'll do our best to talk over it. Don, one of the questions that came in was, if I don't have anyone to manage and my manager is not acting as a coach, how do I implement some of this stuff in today?
Great question. Well, first thing is, do you have a peer? Is there someone within the organization, whether it's the franchise organization, another city, another branch, someone who's a peer that can provide an accountability coach? A great process is to reach out to that person. It could be somebody you went through training with when you were first hired that takes on another branch. Find a way to be accountable to that person, and they to you. And you'll find that you can coach one another as a peer. You may have to reach out and get a coach. Okay, a coach's job is to help you set your objectives and create that balance between personal and professional. So you might have to find your own coach. There are local organizations, quite frankly, that are peer groups that may in fact do that. Okay, for a fee, or some are just, you can find them out there. But I think beyond that, coach yourself. What I mean by that is a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth talks about ways in which you can create a dream room. It's a room, it's not truly a room, but it's a place where you go and you regularly set aside a time. It's just maybe an emotional place where you go and you say, I'm going to just plan today. I'm going to dream. And I'm going to get out of the day-to-day. And that could be the best thing you can do at this point in time. But it could also mean that you have to help your manager become a better coach. And if you want to do that, it's about managing your manager a little better. And that's beyond the scope of today.
Okay, great. Another question came in, said, and I liked how this was phrased, what if motivation is not in your employees' vocabulary? How do you instill motivation?
You fire them. No. Motivation's tough. There's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Your extrinsic motivators are the recognition, attaboy, do it again, disappointed, don't do that again. Those are motivation. It's about catching them doing stuff right. That's the simplest form of motivation. Other extrinsic motivation is things like money or tchotchkes or gifts, little bogeys that you give. But truly, you have to determine. Intrinsic motivation is not a lasting, or extrinsic motivation doesn't last. It's very temporal. What you want to do is you have to have somebody that is motivated, and it could have been a hiring problem. They may walk the walk, talk the talk, but if they are not motivated, you can only create the environment in which their motivation is allowed to propel them to other levels. You can't really motivate somebody intrinsically. So short of trying to find the buttons to push, my suggestion is if it's gotten to that stage, you've got the wrong person. Pure and simple. It was probably a hiring misstep. I hate to say it.
Okay. Don, I had a question for you. In one of your 5 steps to success, you talk about developing a strategic plan and becoming more strategic. But I'm sure we have a lot of people on the call today who are in roles in their organization where they don't have really that strategic authority. How do they balance being strategic with not being able to control the vision of the organization?
Great question. And that's a very, very common issue, David. I'm glad you brought it up. Some companies don't do a good job of presenting what that vision is. I guess if that's the case, you as a manager within your branch kind of have a vision of how you will support the corporation. And it's up to you then is to rally the team around that vision. And again, it can't be us against them. It can't be this branch against the big bad ivory tower. It has to be a positive alignment. So if you've not been shared the vision, ask for it. If they can't deliver it, then you interpret what best it is and rally your troops around it. And then you're creating a sense of vision and mission at your level. But you can't expect every company to do a good job. I will tell you that culture is the hardest thing in any organization to change, period. It takes a long time. It takes a long commitment. But if you want to set the culture within your branch, you are responsible for that. I don't know if that answers the question, Dave.
That did very well. Thank you. All right, we are just coming up on the end of our time together today, so I'm going to wrap things up. Don, thank you so much for the presentation. Despite all the clicking, there's been tons of great information, and I'd like to give Don's company a plug. If you are looking for sales leadership training, sales management training, coaching, help with hiring and selecting salespeople, give Don a call. His name and contact information is at the bottom of this slide, and I promise I'll talk to you without any clicking in the background. I also had a last question come in about the slides from today's presentation, and all of you should have got a reminder email with your login information to the webinar. There was a link in that email to a web page where you can download these slides. There will be a follow-up email starting tomorrow going out where there will also be a link to these slides. And even with all the clicking, we did record it, and it will be available to re-listen to starting sometime mid-next week. I want to thank everybody for coming to today's Lunch with Haley. Our next one coming up in just a couple of weeks is what to do when someone says we're not hiring. That all too common refrain we're all hearing from HR and our other contacts in our client organizations. And again, thank you for being part of today's Lunch with Haley. As you log out, just one last housekeeping item. The system will ask you to complete a brief survey. Your feedback really helps us to improve. We know about the clicking, so you don't need to tell us about that one. I'm going to contact GoToWebinar right away, see what they can do. But if there are any other suggestions for improvement, please share them, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks for our next Lunch with Haley webinar.